For my 43th birthday, my wife, her sisters, and my parents kept saying, "There's a surprise, so just wait." On the birthday, none of my family showed up, not even my wife and kids. Instead, there was a video of them on a Paris trip with a message, "He won't be hurt by this." I didn't contact them at all, but after I posted photos with I got 230 calls. I'm gonna be honest, I hadn't given a damn about birthdays in years. Used to be, turning another year older felt like some kind of achievement, you know? Like I'd survived another trip around the sun and deserved a pat on the back. But somewhere along the way, birthdays just became another day on the calendar. Another excuse for Delia to stress about party planning and for the kids to ask for cake at breakfast. But this year? Man, this year felt different from the jump. It started about 3 weeks out from my 43rd. Delia was acting weird. And I don't mean her usual weird, like reorganizing the spice rack by color or watching those true crime documentaries that keep her up at night. This was different. She'd get this little smirk whenever I mentioned my birthday, like she was holding on to some juicy secret. At first, I figured she was planning something small. Maybe dinner at that Italian place downtown, or she'd finally gotten me those noise-canceling headphones I'd been dropping hints about. Then her sisters got involved. Trish called on a Tuesday, which was already suspicious because Trish never calls on weekdays. She's too busy with her yoga instructor certification or whatever new wellness trend she's obsessing over. But there she was, asking about my work schedule for the week of my birthday. "You're not working late that Friday, are you?" she asked, and I could practically hear the grin in her voice. "I don't think so." "What?" "Oh, nothing. Just keep your evening free, okay? Trust me on this one." Trust Trish. Right. The same woman who convinced me to try that juice cleanse that had me running to the bathroom every 20 minutes for 3 days straight. Then Noelle started in on me. Noelle's the baby of Delia's family, and usually she's too wrapped up in her own drama to pay attention to anyone else's life. But suddenly she's texting me about big plans, and "you're gonna love this," and all sorts of cryptic nonsense that had me scratching my head. The real kicker came when my mother called. Now, Marta, bless her heart, only calls for 2 reasons: to tell me my type doesn't match my shirt, or to remind me that I'm not living up to my potential. So when she called and started talking about my birthday, I knew something was up. "Miles, Mijo, you need to clear your schedule for Friday night," she said in that tone she uses when she thinks she knows better than everyone else. Which, let's be real, is most of the time. Why? What's going on? There's a surprise coming. A big one. And don't you dare make any plans, you hear me? Cancel whatever you were thinking of doing. I wasn't thinking of doing anything, but I wasn't about to tell her that. "Okay, Ma, I'll keep the night free." "Good. You deserve this, Miles. You really do." That threw me off. My mother isn't exactly the warm and fuzzy type. She's more of the "why haven't you gotten a promotion yet?" and "when are you going to fix that fence?" type. So hearing her say I deserved something nice, that was new. The whole thing started feeling like some kind of conspiracy. Even Kareem got in on it when we grabbed lunch last week. "Bro, I heard through the grapevine that your birthday's gonna be special this year," he said, stealing a fry off my plate like he always does. "What grapevine? You talking to my wife now?" "Maybe, maybe not. All I'm saying is, it's about time someone appreciated everything you do around here. Kareem's been my boy since college. We pledged the same fraternity, survived organic chemistry together, and he was my best man when I married Delia. If anyone knows me, it's him. And if he was in on whatever this was, it had to be good." By the time Friday rolled around, I was actually excited. I hadn't felt that way about my birthday in years. Usually, it was just another reminder that I was getting older, that my hairline was creeping back, that my knees made weird noises when I got out of bed. But this year, with everyone acting like they had the secret to the universe, I found myself looking forward to whatever they had planned. The girls, my daughters Emma and Sophie, had been working on something all week. I'd catch them whispering in corners, giggling when I walked into the room, hiding pieces of construction paper behind their backs. On Friday morning, they presented me with these adorable handmade cards. Emma's had a drawing of our family with everyone holding balloons, and Sophie's was covered in so much glitter I was finding sparkles on my clothes for the rest of the day. "Happy birthday, Daddy," they squealed, throwing their arms around me. "Thanks, girls. These are beautiful. Mommy helped us with the spelling," Emma whispered, like it was our little secret. Delia smiled from the kitchen doorway, holding a cup of coffee and wearing this satisfied look that I'd been seeing a lot of lately. "There's more where that came from," she said, walking over to kiss my cheek. Later that afternoon, she handed me a gift bag with tissue paper sticking out the top. "Just a little something to tide you over," she said. Inside was a navy blue dress shirt, the expensive kind from that department store downtown where everything costs twice what it should. It was nice, really nice. The kind of shirt I'd wear to important meetings or fancy dinners. "This is perfect," I said, holding it up. "Thank you. I thought you could wear it tonight." "Tonight?" She winked. "You'll see." By 5 o'clock, I was getting antsy. Everyone kept telling me to keep my evening free, but nobody was giving me any details. Finally, around 6, Delia handed me an address written on a piece of paper. "Be there at 7, she said, "and wear the shirt." The address was for Lakeshore Grill, this upscale place by the water that we'd been to a few times for anniversaries and special occasions. I figured that's where the surprise was happening. Maybe they'd reserved a private room or gotten the whole family together for dinner. I took a shower, put on the new shirt, and actually spent some time in front of the mirror making sure I looked good. When was the last time I'd done that? When was the last time I'd cared about looking good for my own birthday? As I grabbed my keys, I felt this warm feeling in my chest. Maybe Kareem was right. Maybe it was about time someone appreciated everything I did. Maybe after all these years of putting everyone else first, working overtime to pay for dance classes and family vacations, fixing leaky faucets and broken washing machines, being the reliable one, the responsible one. Maybe it was finally my turn to be celebrated. I was smiling as I drove to the restaurant, actually humming along to the radio. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I mattered, like I was worth the effort of a surprise. The valet at Lakeshore Grill took my keys with a smile that made me feel like I was somebody important. This place wasn't cheap. Hell, it was the kind of restaurant where they brought you bread that probably cost more than most people's lunch. But tonight, I didn't care about the price. Tonight was about whatever surprise my family had cooked up for me. "Good evening, sir. Do you have a reservation?" the hostess asked, all polished and professional in her black dress. "Yeah, it should be under Miles Harrison." She scrolled through her tablet, then looked up with that bright customer service smile. "Ah yes, Mr. Harrison. Right this way." She led me through the main dining room, past couples sharing intimate dinners and business folks closing deals over expensive wine. The whole place had this warm, golden lighting that made everything look like it belonged in a movie. I straightened my shoulders, feeling good in my new navy shirt, wondering how many people Delia had managed to surprise me with. But when we got to the table, my stomach dropped just a little. It was beautiful, don't get me wrong. The table was set for what looked like 6 or 7 people. Crisp white linens, flickering candles, cloth napkins folded into these fancy triangles that probably had a name I didn't know. There was already a bottle of wine chilling in an ice bucket, the condensation making little droplets that caught the candlelight. Everything looked perfect. Except it was empty. "Your party will be joining you shortly?" the hostess asked, pulling out a chair for me. "Yeah, they should be here any minute," I said, settling into my seat and trying to shake off the weird feeling creeping up my spine. Maybe they were running late. Maybe they were all coming together and got stuck in traffic. Maybe this was part of the surprise, make me sweat a little before the big reveal. I checked my watch, 7:05. Not a big deal. Delia was always running a few minutes behind, and getting a whole group organized was like herding cats. The server came by, young guy, probably working his way through college, with that eager-to-please energy that screamed, "I need good tips." "Good evening, sir. Can I start you off with something to drink while you wait for the rest of your party?" "Just water for now, thanks. They should be here soon." He nodded and disappeared, leaving me alone with the flickering candles and the sound of conversations from other tables. I pulled out my phone, thinking maybe I'd missed a text about them running late. Nothing. 7:15 rolled around, then 7:20. I started doing that thing where you check your phone every 30 seconds, hoping you somehow missed a notification. The server came back with my water and a basket of that expensive bread. "Would you like me to pour the wine, sir?" "Let's wait a few more minutes," I said, trying to keep my voice casual. "They're just running a little behind." But inside, that weird feeling was growing stronger. This wasn't like Delia. She might run 5 or 10 minutes late, but not this late. Not for something she'd been planning for weeks. And my mother? Marta was never late for anything. She showed up 15 minutes early to everything, just to prove a point. I tried calling Delia. Straight to voicemail. Hey, it's me. I'm at the restaurant. Where is everyone? I texted the group chat we had with her sisters. At Lakeshore Grill. You guys on your way? The messages showed as delivered, but no responses. By 7:30, other diners were starting to notice. I could feel their eyes on me. The guy sitting alone at a table set for a party, checking his phone like a teenager waiting for a text back from his crush. The server kept circling back, probably wondering if he should seat someone else at this prime table. Sir, would you like to order an appetizer while you wait? Sure, I said, just to give my hands something to do. The calamari sounds good. At least if I was eating, I'd look less pathetic. Less like the guy who got stood up at his own birthday dinner. I called my parents' house. No answer. Called Trish directly. Voicemail. Noel? Same thing. What the hell was going on? 8 o'clock came and went. The calamari arrived. Perfectly golden, with some kind of fancy aioli that probably had a French name, but I could barely taste it. My stomach was too twisted up with this growing sense that something was seriously wrong. Maybe there'd been an accident. Maybe they were all together somewhere, and something had happened. My mind started racing through possibilities. Car crashes, medical emergencies, some kind of family crisis that had pulled everyone away at the last minute. But then why wasn't anyone answering their phones? Why wasn't anyone texting me back? I tried Kareem. At least he'd give me a straight answer. Yo, Miles. How's the big birthday surprise going? That's what I'm trying to figure out. Nobody showed up. There was a pause. What do you mean nobody showed up? I mean, I'm sitting at this table by myself, and my whole family is MIA. Delia, her sisters, my parents. Nobody's answering their phones. Dude, that's really weird. Delia was so excited about tonight when she called me last week. She called you. Yeah, asking about your favorite wine and stuff. She seemed really pumped about whatever she had planned. The knot in my stomach tightened. If Delia was that excited, if she'd been planning this for weeks, why would she just not show up? It didn't make sense. Look, maybe there's some kind of mix-up, Kareem said. Maybe they're at a different restaurant or something. No, the reservation was definitely under my name. The hostess found it right away. Okay, well, maybe they're planning some kind of dramatic entrance? You know how Delia likes her big moments. I wanted to believe that. I really did. But it was past 8:30 now, and even Delia's love for drama had limits. That's when my phone buzzed with a notification. Finally. But it wasn't a text. It wasn't a call. It was a notification from Instagram. Someone had tagged me in a video. My heart started pounding as I opened the app. The video was posted by Delia's account, and the thumbnail showed what looked like a boat with the Eiffel Tower in the background. Paris. With shaking fingers, I tapped play. The video started with shaky phone footage, the kind you get when someone's trying to film while walking. I could hear laughter in the background, voices I recognized but couldn't quite place yet. Then the camera steadied, and my world tilted sideways. There was the Seine River, looking like something straight out of a postcard. Those classic Parisian buildings lined the banks, all cream-colored stone and wrought iron balconies. And rising up in the background, lit up against the evening sky like some kind of romantic movie set, was the Eiffel Tower. But it wasn't the scenery that made my blood run cold. It was the people. There was Delia, my wife of 15 years, looking absolutely radiant in a white sundress I'd never seen before. Her hair was done up in some fancy style, and she was wearing lipstick, the good stuff she usually saved for special occasions. She was laughing at something off camera, holding a champagne flute like she didn't have a care in the world. Next to her sat Trish, Delia's older sister, wearing designer sunglasses that probably cost more than my monthly car payment. She had on this flowing scarf that was catching the breeze, making her look like some kind of Instagram influencer. Which, knowing Trish, was probably exactly the look she was going for. And there was Noelle, the baby of the family, taking a selfie with the tower in the background. She was making that duck face expression that she thought made her look sophisticated, but really just made her look ridiculous. Her phone had one of those ring lights attached to it, because God forbid she take a photo without perfect lighting. But the real gut punch came when I saw my parents. My mother, Marta, was sitting at what looked like the head of a long table on the boat's deck. She was wearing her pearls, the ones she only brought out for weddings and funerals, and this satisfied smile that I knew all too well. It was the same expression she got when she thought she'd outsmarted someone. And my father, Leonard, was right there beside her, raising his own glass of champagne. Leonard, who complained about spending money on anything that wasn't absolutely necessary. Leonard, who made me feel guilty for buying name-brand cereal. There he was, toasting with champagne that probably cost more per bottle than he usually spent on groceries in a week. The camera panned across the group, and I could see other people too. Cousins, family friends, people I'd known for years. All of them dressed up, all of them laughing, all of them having the time of their lives on what was clearly an expensive dinner cruise. Then I heard my daughter's voices. "Daddy's gonna be so surprised." Emma giggled, her voice bright and innocent. "Can we send him the video now?" Sophie asked. My heart clenched. My little girls were there too, somewhere off camera, probably thinking this was all some wonderful adventure. They had no idea what this really was. They couldn't understand that their father was sitting alone in a restaurant, watching his entire family celebrate without him. The camera swung back to Delia, and she looked directly into the lens with a smile that made my stomach turn. It wasn't her usual smile, the one I'd fallen in love with in college, the one that lit up her whole face. This was something else. This was calculated. "To Miles," she said, raising her champagne glass higher. Everyone else in the frame raised their glasses too. My mother, my father, her sisters, even people I could barely see at the edges of the video. "To Miles," they echoed, and their voices carried across the water, mixing with the sounds of the city and the gentle lapping of waves against the boat. But Delia wasn't done. She kept that smile fixed on the camera, and her next words hit me like a physical blow. "He won't be hurt by this." The laughter that followed was like knives. Not mean-spirited exactly, but thoughtless. Like I was some kind of inside joke they all shared. Like my feelings were so inconsequential that they didn't even warrant consideration. They all drank, toasting to my absence, celebrating the fact that they'd managed to orchestrate this elaborate deception. My mother actually clinked her glass against Delia's, looking pleased as punch. Trish was already taking pictures of her champagne against the Parisian skyline. Noelle was back to her selfies. And then I heard my daughters again, closer to the camera this time. "Look, Daddy." Emma's voice was pure joy. "We're eating ice cream for dinner." The camera dipped down to show both girls holding elaborate sundaes, their faces already smeared with chocolate and whipped cream. They were wearing matching dresses I'd never seen before, expensive-looking things with lots of ruffles and bows. "Grandma Marta said we could have dessert first because it's a special day," Sophie added, bouncing in her seat. A special day? My birthday. The day they'd all conspired to exclude me from while using my money to fund their Parisian adventure. The video kept going for another minute or two, showing more shots of the boat, the river, the tower, all lit up. I could see the group toasting again, my father telling some story that had everyone laughing, Trish posing for more photos. It looked like the most wonderful evening imaginable, and I wasn't in a single frame. When it finally ended, I just sat there staring at my phone screen. The restaurant sounds, clinking glasses, conversations, the soft jazz playing in the background, all seemed to fade away. All I could hear was the echo of Delia's words. "He won't be hurt by this." But I was hurt. More than hurt. I felt like I'd been hollowed out, like someone had reached inside my chest and scooped out everything that mattered. The server appeared at my elbow again. "Sir, is everything all right?" I looked up at him. This kid who was probably younger than my marriage, who was just trying to do his job and earn his tips. For a second, I couldn't even remember where I was. "Yeah, I managed. Everything's fine. Can I get the check?" He looked confused. "But you haven't ordered dinner yet, sir. And the wine. Just the check, please." I sat there alone at that beautifully set table, surrounded by empty chairs and the ghosts of the celebration that should have been mine. The candles kept flickering, the expensive wine kept chilling, and somewhere across the ocean, my family kept laughing. I paid for my untouched meal in cash, didn't want to deal with the server's concerned looks any longer than necessary. The calamari sat there getting cold, the wine never got opened, and that beautiful table setting just mocked me with its optimism. I left a decent tip anyway, because none of this was the kid's fault, then walked out into the night feeling like I'd been sucker punched. The valet brought my car around, and I sat behind the wheel for a solid 10 minutes in the restaurant parking lot, just staring at the lake. Couples were walking along the shore, holding hands under the streetlights. Normal people having normal Friday nights. Meanwhile, I felt like I was living in some twisted alternate reality where the people closest to me had turned into strangers. I drove home on autopilot, my mind replaying that video over and over. Delia's smile, my mother's satisfied expression, the sound of my daughters laughing while eating ice cream for dinner halfway around the world. He won't be hurt by this. The words kept echoing in my head like a broken record. When I pulled into my driveway, the house looked different somehow. Too quiet. Too empty. I sat in the car for another few minutes, dreading the idea of walking into that silence. But eventually, I forced myself out and trudged up to the front door. That's when I made my decision. I wasn't going to reach out. I wasn't going to call or text or beg for explanations. If they wanted to pretend I didn't exist, then I'd give them exactly what they wanted. Radio silence. I went straight to the kitchen and poured myself 3 fingers of bourbon. The good stuff I usually saved for celebrations. Seemed appropriate, in a sick way. Then I did something I hadn't done in years. I posted on Instagram. It was just a simple photo. Me sitting at my kitchen island, holding that glass of bourbon, with a forced smile that probably fooled nobody. The caption read, "Thanks for the surprise." I hit post before I could second-guess myself. Within minutes, my phone started buzzing with comments. Friends from work asking if everything was okay. Neighbors wondering where the family was. College buddies making jokes about getting old. I ignored them all and went upstairs to change out of that navy shirt, the one Delia had bought me to wear to my own humiliation. I was halfway through a Netflix documentary about ocean life when I heard car doors slamming outside. For a split second, my heart jumped. Maybe they'd come back early. Maybe there was some explanation that would make this all make sense. But when I looked out the window, it wasn't Delia's SUV in my driveway. It was Kareem's beat-up Honda Civic, and behind it was another car I didn't recognize. I heard footsteps on the front porch, then Kareem's voice calling through the door. "Miles, open up, man. I know you're in there." I considered pretending I wasn't home, but honestly, I was tired of being alone with my thoughts. I shuffled downstairs and opened the door to find Kareem standing there with 3 other people I vaguely recognized from his art studio downtown. "Saw your Instagram post," Kareem said, pushing past me into the house. And that fake-ass smile wasn't fooling anybody. The other 3 followed him in, 2 guys and a woman, all of them carrying grocery bags and looking like they were ready to camp out for a while. "Hope you don't mind the invasion," said the woman, extending her hand. "I'm Sierra. We met briefly at Kareem's gallery opening last month." Now I remembered her. Tall, with natural hair pulled back in a colorful head wrap, and these expressive eyes that seemed to see right through people's bullshit. She was a sculptor, if I recalled correctly, and had this way of talking that made you feel like you'd been friends for years. "This is Marcus and Devin," she continued, nodding toward the 2 guys. Marcus was this stocky dude with paint permanently embedded under his fingernails, and Devin was tall and lean with the kind of carefully maintained beard that took actual effort. "We brought supplies," Marcus announced, hefting a bag that clinked with bottles. "Figured you might need some real company tonight." I wanted to tell them they didn't need to do this, that I was fine, that I just wanted to be alone to process what had happened. But the words wouldn't come. Maybe because I wasn't fine. Maybe because being alone was the last thing I actually needed right now. "You guys didn't have to," I started. "Nah, man." Devin cut me off, already heading toward my kitchen like he owned the place. Nobody should be alone on their birthday. Especially not after whatever bullshit went down tonight. They took over my house with the kind of easy confidence that comes from people who genuinely don't care about social conventions. Sierra started unpacking what looked like enough food for a small army. Fancy cheeses, crackers, some kind of artisanal salami, fresh fruit that probably came from one of those expensive organic markets. Marcus had brought speakers and was already connecting his phone to my Wi-Fi, filling the silence with something smooth and jazzy that immediately made the house feel less empty. Devin was exploring my liquor cabinet like he was conducting an archaeological dig, pulling out bottles I'd forgotten I owned. "Ooh, you've got some good stuff hidden back here," he called out. "This bourbon's older than my nephew." Kareem settled into my favorite armchair and gave me a look that was part sympathy, part righteous anger. "You gonna tell us what happened, or do we have to guess?" So I told them. About the weeks of hints and mysterious smiles. About sitting alone in that restaurant for 2 hours. About the video from Paris, with my whole family toasting my absence like it was something to celebrate. None of them interrupted. They just listened, passing around glasses of that ancient bourbon and letting me get it all out. When I finished, the room was quiet for a long moment. Then Sierra raised her glass. "To the man who turned a betrayal into a vibe," she said, her voice carrying just the right mix of defiance and celebration. The others raised their glasses too, and suddenly we were toasting. Not my humiliation, not my family's cruel joke, but something else entirely. My resilience, maybe. My worth as a human being. The fact that I deserved better than what I'd gotten. We didn't talk about Delia or my parents or what any of it meant. Instead, we talked about art and music and travel and books. Marcus told stories about his latest sculpture series. Devin had us cracking up with impressions of difficult customers at the coffee shop where he worked part-time. Sierra shared this wild tale about getting lost in the Paris metro during her study abroad program. And slowly, gradually, I started to feel human again. Not the discarded husband or the forgotten father, but just Miles. A guy who had friends who cared enough to show up uninvited on his worst night and turn it into something that felt almost like joy. I woke up Saturday morning with a bourbon headache and the taste of betrayal still bitter in my mouth. Kareem and his friends had stayed until almost 2 a.m., and for those few hours, I'd actually forgotten about the video, about Paris, about everything. But now, in the harsh light of day, reality came crashing back down. The house felt different. Wrong somehow, like I was trespassing in my own life. I shuffled to the kitchen, stepping over empty bottles and cheese crumbs from last night's impromptu gathering. The silence was deafening. No cartoons blasting from the living room. No sound of Delia's hair dryer upstairs. No little feet running around. No arguments about breakfast choices. No chaos that usually defined Saturday mornings in the Harrison household. Just me and the ghosts of the life I thought I had. I made coffee with shaking hands, trying to ignore the family photos covering the refrigerator. There was last Christmas morning, with Emma and Sophie tearing into presents while Delia and I smiled behind them. There was our vacation to the Outer Banks last summer, all four of us building sandcastles and looking like the perfect American family. There was Delia's birthday dinner from 2 months ago, where she'd insisted on that fancy restaurant downtown, and I complained about the prices but paid anyway because seeing her happy was worth it. All eyes, apparently. I took my coffee to the living room and sank into the couch that still smelled like Delia's vanilla perfume. The scent hit me like a physical blow, bringing back 1,000 memories I wasn't ready to process. Date nights, movie marathons, lazy Sunday mornings when we'd read the paper together while the girls played on the floor. All of it felt tainted now, like I was looking at someone else's life through a window. That's when I noticed the laptop. Our shared MacBook was sitting on the coffee table, right where Delia had left it before whatever this was. She always forgot to log out of things. Drove me crazy, actually. I'd lecture her about security and privacy, and she'd just roll her eyes and promise to be more careful. She never was. I opened it up, not really sure what I was looking for. Maybe some clue about when this Paris trip had been planned. Maybe some explanation that would make this whole nightmare make sense. The browser was still open to her Gmail account. I should have closed it. Should have respected her privacy and walked away. But after watching that video, after seeing my entire family toast my absence like it was cause for celebration, privacy seemed like a luxury I couldn't afford. The first thing I saw made my blood run cold. An email thread with the subject line, Operation Paris Ghost. Operation Paris Ghost. They'd given it a code name. Like this was some kind of military mission instead of my complete humiliation. I clicked on it with trembling fingers. The thread went back 3 weeks. 3 weeks of planning and coordination, all centered around one goal: getting the entire family to Paris for my birthday while leaving me behind. Delia to Trish. Miles suspects something, but he thinks it's going to be a surprise party. Perfect. Trish to Noelle. Got the hotel reservations confirmed. The suite has 2 bedrooms for the girls and a pull-out for mom and dad. Noelle to Delia. Should we feel bad about this? He's going to be so confused. Delia to Noelle. He'll get over it. Miles always gets over things. Besides, when's the last time we had a real vacation without him analyzing every expense? When's the last time we had a real vacation without him? Like I was some kind of burden. Like my presence somehow ruined their fun. I kept scrolling, my hands getting shakier with each message. Marta to Delia. I transferred the money for Leonard's ticket. This will be good for him. He needs to live a little. Delia to Marta. Perfect. I've got everything else covered on our household account. Miles never checks the statements anyway. That was true. I trusted her completely with our finances. She handled the day-to-day, spending while I focused on the bigger picture, retirement planning, college funds for the girls, making sure we had enough saved for emergencies. I never thought I needed to monitor her spending because I never thought she'd use our money to fund my own exile. But the worst was yet to come. I found a message from Trish that made my stomach drop to the floor. God, I can't wait to see his face when he realizes we're all gone. Do you think he'll actually cry? Delia's response, probably not. Miles doesn't really do emotions. He'll just sulk for a day or two and then move on. You know how he is. Always the practical one. Always the practical one. Like that was somehow a character flaw. Like being responsible and reliable made me less human. There were logistics discussed. Flight times coordinated. Restaurant reservations made. All using my credit card, apparently. They'd even planned the Instagram post, debating whether the video should be playful teasing or more dramatic. They'd settled on playful teasing. I found photos attached to some of the emails, screenshots of the Paris hotel, pictures of the boat they'd reserved for dinner, links to activities they wanted to do. A whole itinerary for a trip I was paying for but not invited to. And then I found the worst email of all. It was from my father to Delia, sent just 2 days ago. Delia, I have to ask, are we sure this is the right thing to do? Miles works hard for this family. Maybe we should. Delia's response was swift and brutal. Leonard, Miles has been taking us all for granted for years. He needs to learn that we're not just accessories to his boring little life. This will be a wake-up call. Trust me, taking them for granted. For working 60-hour weeks to pay for Emma's dance lessons and Sophie's art classes. For never complaining when Delia spent $300 on a purse or when my mother needed help with her car repairs. For putting everyone else's needs before my own, always. I was taking them for granted. I closed the laptop and sat back against the couch cushions, feeling like I'd been gutted. The house seemed even quieter now, filled with the echoes of conversations I'd never been meant to hear. They hadn't just excluded me from their trip. They'd turned me into the villain in their story. The boring, practical husband and father who somehow deserved to be abandoned on his birthday. The man who always got over things and didn't really do emotions. Well, they were about to find out just how wrong they were about that. I looked around the living room one more time, at the family photos, at Delia's books scattered on the end table, at the girls' toys still scattered in the corner from last weekend. Then I picked up my phone and called the one person I knew would give me straight answers about what came next. Eliza Moreau Law Office. This is Jennifer. Hi, Jennifer. This is Miles Harrison. I need to speak with Eliza. It's urgent. I'll see if she's available, Mr. Harrison. Can I tell her what this is regarding? I took a deep breath, tasting the bitterness of my new reality. Tell her I need to discuss my options. All of them. After hanging up with Eliza's office, she'd agreed to see me Monday morning. I found myself staring at that laptop again. The emails had shown me the emotional devastation, but I hadn't looked at the financial damage yet. And if there's one thing 15 years of marriage had taught me, it's that Delia's emotional decisions always came with a price tag. I opened up our online banking, something I usually only checked at the end of each month when I balanced our accounts. We'd always had a system. I handled the long-term planning and major expenses. She managed day-to-day spending and household stuff. It worked because I trusted her. Past tense. The first thing I noticed was a charge from Thursday, the day before my birthday. Delta Airlines. For tickets to Paris. Round trip, business class. $8,000 for $100. I stared at that number, feeling something cold and sharp twist in my gut. $8,000. That was more than most people made in 2 months, and she'd spent it like it was pocket change. But that was just the beginning. I started scrolling through the past month's transactions, and each one hit me like a separate slap in the face. Lou Bristol Paris, $2,400 for 3 nights. That was the boutique hotel Trish had mentioned in the emails. I looked it up. One of those fancy places where they probably charged $20 for a bottle of water and the bathrobes cost more than my car payment. Seine River Cruises, $890 for a private dinner cruise. That boat where they'd all toasted my absence while eating food I'd paid for. Louis Vuitton, Paris, $1,200. Posted yesterday. Yesterday, while I was still processing the fact that my family had abandoned me. Galleries Lafayette, $680. More shopping, more fun with my money. Children's boutique, Champelasis, $340. Those fancy dresses Emma and Sophie had been wearing in the video. The charges kept coming. Restaurants, taxis, a spa day for the women that cost more than I spent on groceries in a month. My mother had apparently discovered room service, charging $180 for what looked like a single meal. Noelle had gone nuts at some designer makeup counter, $450 for products she probably already owned in different shades. But the real kicker was a charge I almost missed, buried between a restaurant bill and cab fare. Tiffany & Company, $3,200. $3,200. At Tiffany. While I was sitting alone at that restaurant, probably around the same time they were shopping for jewelry with my credit card, I pulled up our savings account next, the one we'd been building for the girls' college funds. The balance that should have been sitting at $47,000 was now $39,500. She'd moved $7,500 to checking to cover the Paris extravaganza. My daughter's college money. Money I'd been carefully saving for years, putting away a little each month, sometimes skipping things I wanted so that Emma and Sophie would have options when they graduated high school. And Delia had raided it like a piggy bank to fund her betrayal vacation. I opened a spreadsheet. Yeah, I'm that guy, the one who tracks everything in Excel, and started adding it up. Flights, hotel, meals, shopping, activities, the mysterious Tiffany purchase. When I got to the total, I had to check it twice. $14,867. Almost 15 grand. In 4 days. Money I'd earned working overtime, skipping lunches, saying no to things I wanted so we could build a stable financial future. Money that was supposed to be for our family's security, not Delia's Instagram-worthy revenge plot. But I wasn't done digging. I logged into our credit card accounts, all 3 of them. More charges, going back weeks. Apparently, the shopping for this trip had started long before they left. New luggage for everyone, $800. Clothes for the girls, $600. A shopping spree for Delia at Nordstrom that totaled $1,400. Even my father had gotten new clothes, $300 at Men's Warehouse that I'd somehow missed when I was reviewing monthly statements. They'd been planning this financial assault for weeks, charging everything to cards that I paid off religiously every month. Using the credit rating I'd spent years building to fund my own humiliation. I found charges for passport expediting fees. Apparently Noelle's passport had expired, and they'd paid extra to rush a replacement. Spa appointments before the trip so everyone would look good in their vacation photos. Even a charge to a professional photographer in Paris. They'd hired someone to document their celebration of my absence. By the time I finished my forensic accounting, the total damage was over $17,000. 17 grand. That was a decent used car. That was Emma's entire dance program for 2 years. That was the new roof we'd been talking about getting next spring. Gone. Pissed away on a trip designed to humiliate me. But here's the thing about being married to someone for 15 years. You learn their patterns. And Delia's pattern was to overspend when she was feeling guilty or rebellious, then play innocent when the bills came due. Oh, I didn't realize it was that much. The girls really needed those things. We can afford it, can't we? Not this time. I opened a new browser window and started working. First, I changed the passwords on all our bank accounts. Then I called our credit card companies, one by one. Hi, this is Miles Harrison. I need to report suspicious activity on my account and request temporary holds on all cards. What kind of suspicious activity, Mr. Harrison? Unauthorized charges in Paris. Large amounts. I need everything frozen while I sort this out. It took 3 phone calls and about an hour, but by the time I was done, every credit card tied to our accounts was locked down tight. No more Louis Vuitton sprees. No more spa days on my dime. Next, I logged into our shared investment accounts and changed those passwords too. Then our mortgage company's website, our insurance policies, every financial account that had both our names on it. She wanted to treat me like I didn't exist? Fine. But she was going to find out real quick that the boring, practical husband she'd been taking for granted was also the one who handled every aspect of our financial life. I picked up my phone and called Trish's husband, Steve. Poor guy probably had no idea his wife was gallivanting around Paris on my credit card. Miles, how's it going, man? I heard the family's having a great time in. Steve, I need to talk to you about something. Are you sitting down? When I finished explaining the situation, Steve was quiet for a long moment. Jesus, Miles. I had no idea. Trish told me it was some kind of family reunion thing, that you had to work. She said you guys were covering her flight as an early birthday present. Yeah, well, turns out there were a lot of lies going around. Look, I can transfer money to cover Trish's expenses. This is really messed up. I appreciate that, Steve. But right now, I'm more interested in making sure everyone understands that the free ride is over. After I hung up, I sat back in my chair and looked at my handiwork. Passwords changed. Cards frozen. Financial bloodlines cut off. For the first time since watching that video, I felt something other than hurt and betrayal. I felt powerful. They thought they knew me, boring, practical Miles who always got over things and never made waves. But they'd made one crucial miscalculation. The same attention to detail that made me good at my job, the same careful planning that kept our household running smoothly, the same methodical approach that had built our financial security. All of that was now focused on protecting myself. The accountant in me was finally awake, and he was pissed. The first call came Sunday morning at 6:47 a.m. Delia's ringtone, that annoying chime she'd picked because it was cheerful, jolted me out of the first decent sleep I'd had since Friday night. I looked at her name on the screen and felt something cold settle in my chest. I let it go to voicemail. Then it rang again, and again. By the third call, I turned the phone face down on my nightstand and went to make coffee. But I could still hear it buzzing against the wood, insistent and desperate. The voicemails started piling up. I didn't listen to them, but I could see the timestamps. 6:47 a.m., 7:12 a.m., 7:15 a.m., 7:23 a.m. She was losing her mind, and we weren't even at the good part yet. Around 10, I decided to give them something to really panic about. I called Kareem. You free this afternoon? I want to hit up that gallery opening you mentioned. The one downtown? Hell yeah. You feeling up for it? More than up for it. I'm feeling like celebrating. Celebrating what? My freedom. We met at Kareem's studio first, and he'd already assembled quite the crew. Sierra was there, along with Marcus and Devin from Friday night, plus a few other artists I'd met at various gallery events over the years. These weren't just Kareem's friends. They were successful, interesting people who'd chosen to spend their Sunday afternoon with me instead of whatever else they could have been doing. Sierra had brought her camera, one of those expensive ones that made everyone look like they belonged in a magazine. Mind if I document this renaissance you're having? She asked with a grin. Document away. The gallery opening was for some up-and-coming photographer who specialized in urban landscapes. The kind of art that made you see your own city differently. But honestly, I wasn't really there for the art. I was there to be seen. To exist loudly in a space where my family couldn't control the narrative. We grabbed drinks. Actual good wine, not the cheap stuff. And I found myself relaxing for the first time in days. These people talked to me like I was worth talking to. They asked my opinion on things. They laughed at my jokes. They treated me like a human being instead of some background character in their drama. That's when Sierra suggested we move the party to Kareem's rooftop. The studio was in this converted warehouse in the Arts District, and the rooftop had one of those killer views of the city skyline. Someone had strung lights between the air conditioning units, and there were these mismatched tables and chairs scattered around, the kind of setup that looked effortless but probably took hours to arrange. Marcus knew a guy who ran a food truck, and within an hour we had legitimate street tacos and this incredible sangria that Sierra had whipped up from ingredients she'd somehow procured. More people started showing up, friends of friends, people who'd heard there was a good party happening and decided to check it out. I was in the middle of a conversation with this sculptor named James about the difference between creating art and creating content when Sierra appeared at my elbow with her camera. This is it, she said. This is the shot. I was laughing, genuinely laughing, at something Devin had said while holding a plastic cup of sangria. The city lights were twinkling behind me, and I was surrounded by people who'd chosen to be there. People who saw value in my company. Post it, I told her. She raised an eyebrow. You sure? I'm sure. The photo went up on my Instagram 20 minutes later. Me, Kareem, and about 15 other people on that rooftop, everyone holding drinks and looking like we were having the time of our lives. Which, honestly, we were. The caption was simple. Growth looks better than gifts. I posted it and immediately put my phone on airplane mode. Then I handed it to Kareem. Hold on to this for me. I don't want to be tempted to check it. How long you planning to stay dark? Long enough. We stayed on that rooftop until almost midnight, talking and laughing and eating way too many tacos. At some point, someone brought out a guitar, and we had this impromptu sing-along that would have been cheesy with any other group, but felt perfect with these people. When Kareem finally gave me my phone back as we were leaving, I switched it back to normal mode and watched the notifications explode across the screen like a digital fireworks show. 87 missed calls, 230 text messages, 47 voicemails. And the Instagram post? 340 likes and 89 comments from people I'd forgotten I even knew. College friends, work colleagues, neighbors, distant relatives. All of them asking where this Miles had been hiding and when they could hang out. But the calls and texts weren't from those people. They were from my family. Delia had called 43 times. 43 times in one evening. The voicemails got progressively more frantic as the night went on. I could see the durations getting longer. The first few were probably just call me back, but by the end she was leaving 5-minute messages. My mother had called 18 times. Trish, 12. Noel, 8. Even my father had called, which never happened unless someone was dead or dying. The text messages were a mix of confusion, anger, and what I was starting to recognize as panic. Delia, why aren't you answering your phone? Delia, Miles, this isn't funny. Call me back. Delia, I saw your Instagram. Who are those people? Delia, Miles. Answer your phone. My mother. Miles, your wife is worried sick. Call her immediately. Trish, what's going on? Delia's crying and you're not answering anyone. Noel, Miles? Hello? We can see you posting on Instagram, but you won't answer calls. And then, buried in the middle of all the increasingly desperate messages, was one that made me smile. It was from Steve, Trish's husband. Saw your post. Looks like you're doing all right, man. Good for you. They weren't sorry. They weren't apologetic. They were scared. Because for the first time in our relationship, maybe for the first time in my entire life, I wasn't available when they wanted me to be. I wasn't rushing to smooth things over or make everyone comfortable. I was just gone. And my silence was apparently louder than any argument I could have started. I scrolled through more of the messages, watching the progression from annoyance to confusion to genuine panic. They'd gone from treating me like an inconvenience to desperately needing my attention, and the shift had happened in the span of a few hours. The last voicemail was from Delia, timestamped at 11:43 p.m. I almost listened to it. Almost broke my own rule about staying silent. But then I remembered that video. I remembered Operation Paris Ghost. I remembered $17,000 of my money spent to celebrate my absence. Instead, I deleted every voicemail without listening to them. Marked every text as read without responding. And then I did something that would have been unthinkable a week ago. I blocked all of their numbers. Not permanently. I wasn't completely crazy. But for now, for however long this took, I needed to control when and how they could reach me. They'd had their fun treating me like I didn't matter. Now they could find out what it actually felt like when I didn't. Tuesday afternoon, I was in my home office reviewing quarterly reports when I heard the distinctive rumble of Delia's SUV pulling into the driveway. Then car doors slamming. Multiple car doors. The whole circus was back in town. I didn't get up, didn't rush to the window, or hurry downstairs to greet them. I just sat there, listening to the sounds of luggage wheels rolling across concrete and my daughter's excited chatter about their amazing trip to Paris. My chest tightened hearing their voices, but I forced myself to stay put. The front door opened with a bang. Delia never did anything quietly, followed by the chaos of a family returning from vacation. Suitcases hitting the floor. Trish's voice complaining about jet lag. My mother's imperious tone directing traffic like she owned the place. Miles. Delia's voice echoed through the house. Miles, we're back. Like this was some kind of happy reunion. Like I should be grateful they'd graced me with their presence. I heard footsteps on the stairs. Delia looking for me in the bedroom. Then back downstairs, checking the living room, the kitchen. Getting increasingly agitated when she couldn't find me immediately. Where is he? I heard her ask someone. His car's in the garage, Trish replied. He has to be here. Finally, the inevitable knock on my office door. Miles, I know you're in there. I opened the door slowly, deliberately. Delia stood there looking like she'd stepped out of a travel magazine. Perfectly styled hair, designer sunglasses pushed up on her head, wearing some flowing scarf that screamed, "I've been to Europe." Behind her, I could see Trish examining her manicure and Noelle scrolling through her phone, probably editing Paris photos for social media. "Hey," Delia said, her voice artificially bright. "We're back." "I can see that." She waited for me to say more. When I didn't, her smile faltered just a bit. "So, aren't you going to ask how the trip was?" "No." The single word hung in the air between us like a slap. I watched her face cycle through confusion, irritation, and something that might have been fear. "Miles, what's wrong with you? We tried calling." "I know." "Well, why didn't you answer?" Instead of responding, I walked back to my desk and picked up a manila folder I'd prepared that morning. It contained printouts of bank statements, credit card bills, and a few other documents that would make my position crystal clear. "This is for you," I said, handing it to her. She opened it, and I watched her face change as she processed what she was seeing. The hotel charges, the shopping sprees, the $17,000 in total damage. "Miles, I can explain. Your credit cards have been canceled," I said calmly. "All of them. Your access to our bank accounts has been suspended pending review." "And Dominic?" Her face went white. "What about Dominic?" "Dominic's employment at Harrison and Associates has been terminated. Effective immediately." The color drained completely from her face. Dominic worked at a consulting firm where I was a major shareholder, something Delia had apparently forgotten in her grand planning. One phone call to my business partner, and her little side piece was out of a job. "You can't do that," she whispered. "I just did." Trish appeared in the doorway, probably drawn by the tension. She was wearing those ridiculous designer sunglasses she'd bought with my money, looking like she'd stepped off a yacht instead of out of coach class. "What's going on?" Trish asked, then noticed the folder in Delia's hands. Oh, indeed," I said. "Did you enjoy the Louis Vuitton shopping spree, Trish? The one that cost $1,200 of my money." Her mouth opened and closed like a fish. My mother's voice boomed from downstairs. "Miles, come down here this instant. We need to talk." "No," I called back. "We don't." Then I looked directly at Delia, who was still clutching that folder like it might disappear if she held it tight enough. "You wanted to shake things up?" I said quietly. "You thought it would be funny to erase me from my own birthday. Well, congratulations. You've shaken things up. Miles, please. We can talk about this." "No, we can't. You used to be kind, you might say. And you know what? I still am. That's why I'm not dragging this through the mud. That's why I'm not posting those emails about Operation Paris Ghost on social media. That's why I'm handling this quietly." Her eyes widened. She'd forgotten about those emails. "But make no mistake," I continued. "You erased me from my birthday. Now I'm erasing your privileges. All of them." I walked past her toward the door, then stopped. "Oh, and Delia? The house goes on the market next week." After Delia and her circus cleared out, they booked into a hotel, apparently, since I'd made it clear they weren't welcome in my house. I decided to dig deeper into that laptop. Something about this whole situation still felt off. The elaborate planning, the cruelty of it all, the way they'd turned my birthday into some kind of revenge fantasy. It was too calculated, too personal. That's when I found the real treasure trove. Hidden in a folder labeled Travel Photos 2019 were screenshots of text messages between Delia and someone labeled D in her contacts. The timestamps went back months, long before any Paris trip had been planned. My hands were shaking as I opened the first one. "D. Can't stop thinking about last night." "Delia, me neither. But we have to be careful." "D. When are you going to tell him?" "Delia, tell him what? That his boring life is suffocating me? That I need more than his spreadsheets and early bedtimes?" I scrolled down, my heart pounding harder with each message. "D. The conference in Chicago next month. 3 days, just us." "Delia, Miles will never suspect. He trusts me completely. Sometimes I think he's too stupid to see what's right in front of him. Too stupid. 15 years of marriage, and she thought I was too stupid to notice she was having an affair. But the worst ones were time-stamped the night of my birthday. While I was sitting alone in that restaurant, while they were toasting my absence on that boat, Delia and Dominic were exchanging messages that made my stomach turn. "D. Wish you were here with me instead of him. Delia, soon. After this trip, I'll have enough ammunition to justify leaving." Poor Miles, all alone on his birthday. I almost feel bad. "D. Don't. He had this coming." "Delia, you're right. He's had this coming for years." I printed every single message, every photo they'd exchanged, every planning conversation about hotel rooms and secret meetups. The affair had been going on for 8 months, and I'd been completely oblivious. But Eliza Moreau wasn't oblivious. When I showed up at her office Wednesday morning with a banker's box full of evidence, she leaned back in her chair and whistled low. "Miles, this is comprehensive. I'm thorough. I can see that. With evidence like this, we can move quickly. No-fault divorce states don't usually allow for punitive measures, but the financial misconduct, the deliberate emotional cruelty, the affair, we can make a case for you keeping the majority of marital assets." What about the girls? Joint custody is standard, but given that she took them on an international trip without your knowledge or consent and used them as props in what amounts to psychological abuse. She shrugged. "We can work with that too." I started the proceedings that afternoon. Delia must have sensed what was coming because she showed up at my office Thursday, tears streaming down her face, begging to talk. I didn't let her in. She stood outside my building for 2 hours, crying, making a scene, probably hoping I'd feel sorry for her and cave like I always had before. Instead, I had security escort her off the property. "You used to be kind," she sobbed as they led her away. "I still am." I called back through my office window. "That's why I won't drag this out." But I wasn't the same man she'd married. That guy would have rushed down to comfort her, would have tried to fix whatever was broken between us, would have taken responsibility for her unhappiness somehow. This version of me just closed the blinds and got back to work. 6 months later, I'm standing on the rooftop deck of my new waterfront loft, watching the sunrise paint the harbor in shades of gold and orange. The divorce was finalized last month, quicker than expected, thanks to Delia's affair and the mountain of evidence I collected. She got to keep her dignity and avoid a public scandal. I got everything else that mattered. The house sold for way more than we'd paid for it. Amazing what fresh paint and strategic staging can do when you're motivated to move on. I kept most of the proceeds, along with the majority of our investments and retirement accounts. Turns out judges don't look kindly on spouses who blow 17 grand on revenge vacations while carrying on affairs. Emma and Sophie stay with me every other week, and those are the best days of my life. They love the loft, especially the spiral staircase and the fact that they can see boats from their bedroom windows. We make pancakes on Saturday mornings and build blanket forts in the living room. And somehow everything feels lighter without the tension that used to fill our old house. "Daddy, are you happy now?" Emma asked me last weekend, out of nowhere. "Yeah, baby. I think I am." And I meant it. The Miles Forward Fund launched 3 months ago with help from Kareem and his network of artists and activists. We provide grants to single fathers starting over and men who've been financially abused by their partners. Last month, we helped 12 guys get back on their feet. Next month, we're expanding to include legal aid. Tonight's my 44th birthday, and we're having a party right here on this rooftop. Real friends this time. Kareem and his crew, some colleagues from work who've become actual friends instead of just professional contacts, neighbors from the building who've become part of my new chosen family. Sierra's bringing a cake shaped like a boarding pass. The inscription reads, "You took off and never looked back." We laughed about it for 20 minutes when she showed me the design. My phone buzzes with a text from Delia. She still tries to reach out sometimes, usually when she's had too much wine and gets nostalgic. "Happy birthday, Miles. I hope you're well." I delete it without responding, not out of anger anymore, but because that chapter of my life is closed. She's part of my past now, not my present. I'm not the man they forgot. I never was. I was the man they underestimated. And now? Now they're the ones who are erased.